other platforms that are available. And so just take note of that. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed listeners and advocates for positive change, welcome to this thought-provoking discussion that delivers into a pressing issue affecting the very fabric of our society. I am honored to be your host for this special program, focusing on corruption in Ghana, impact on everyday lives and the economy. Let me say that corruption, a shadow that looms over nations, is a challenge that demands our attention and collective efforts. Today, we embark on this journey to unravel the intricate layers of corruption in our country, Ghana, exploring its far-reaching consequences on both the individuals like you and I, or the Ghanaians as a whole, and the broader economic landscape, how it affects us. Let me just indicate to you, ladies and gentlemen, that as we navigate this critical conversation, we aim to not only shed light on the challenges posed by corruption, but also to eliminate the path towards a brighter, more transparent future for our beloved nation, Ghana. Our distinguished panelists will share their insights, experiences, and expertise, digging us through or guiding us through the complexities of this particular issue. Let me assure you, all you need to do is to get ready to gain deeper understanding of how corruption touches the lives of the ordinary Ghanaians, or the ordinary Ghanaian like you and I, and influences the very foundations of the economy that we have in. 2024 is an election year, a year that many people will be casting the ballot to decide who goes to parliament and who leads the nation as the president. Without further ado, let us embark on this important discussion, hoping to spark awareness, inspire change, and foster a commitment to a corruption-free Ghana. My name is Norvan Reports, and this is being hosted by Norvan Reports. It's a business news website, and what basically we do is to ensure that we provide you, who is our reader and our follower, a unique data, business, and financial portal that gives you accurate, impartial reporting of business news in Ghana and Africa and around the world. And we do this, ladies and gentlemen, from a truly independent reporting and analysis point of view. Tonight, our guests will be doing us justice. Let me introduce to you the guests that we have tonight for this important discussion. Tonight, we have with us Franklin Kujo, the founding president of and also the CEO of Imani Ghana, one of our partners. Also with us is Madam Beauty Emefanete, who is also the executive secretary of one of our partner institutions, which is the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. And then somebody that you all know has been on this platform several times, that is Mr. Joe Jackson, the director of business operations at Dulex Finance. I think it's the first time we are having Mr. Franklin Kujo and Madam Emefanete. And we are so grateful to them for joining us tonight. We're grateful to them. Like they say, ladies first all the time. So what I'm going to do is whilst I try to get Mr. Franklin Kujo to set up, Mr. Kujo, we sent you the request to be a speaker, if you can accept it for us quickly, and then we start this discussion tonight with you. It's very important that we come from your angle. I mean, if you look at the topic, and as it is, which is corruption in Ghana, impact on everyday lives and the economy, what you think? I mean, the issues that are there, I want you to help us have a better understanding of the impact of corruption on us as individuals and how we can deal with it. Mr. Kujo, if you can hear me. Hello, Mr. Franklin Kujo. Okay, so then let me come to Madam Beauty whilst Mr. Franklin Kujo tries to set himself up, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Beauty, Madam Beauty, if you can unmute yourself for me, I'll be very grateful. And let me start with you. I mean, you've been working all these years. I mean, and your fight has been over eradicating corruption from the very fiber of our society. If you look at this topic, what are your initial remarks as to what is the problem when it comes to corruption concerning Ghana? Madam Beauty, yes, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say hello to all your listeners and viewers.
Madam Beauty, if you can talk a little bit for us,
Yes,
we'll be grateful.
so please just indulge me. I am treating a cold, so I'll try to speak as loudly as I can. I hope this is better. Has spanned a number of years. We have, as an anti-corruption coalition, been in existence for the past 20 years. And we have pushed and looked at how do we address issues of corruption in Ghana. I'll first start from the legal framework because it's important to look at the legal framework. And from the work that we have done, we've been able to support in terms of ensuring that we have a robust legal framework. In fact, let me quickly say that when it comes to laws, Ghana has done well, appreciably well, with laws very tailored towards the fight against corruption. But unfortunately, the laws that we have are weak. So the weaknesses in our laws have become the challenge to our fight against corruption. And sometimes you even wonder what is the motivation and incentive for passing laws that we know in practice would not help the fight against corruption. So that is where it all began. And some of the laws, I can talk about some of the laws if you permit me. So if you take a law, one law that is dear to my heart has to do with our law on asset declaration. I talk about asset declaration all the time because asset declaration is an important tool for fighting corruption. The reason being that asset declaration provides a framework for us so that when somebody is going into public office, we are able to identify in terms of the person's wealth or even where the person is indebted. We're able to document that, and then we also have opportunity for updates. So, for instance, every 4 years, you're supposed to update that. And then after that, when you even exit office, you are supposed to update that. But I'm afraid to say that our current asset declaration regime is one of the joke of the century because the asset declaration regime does not provide opportunity for verification. Neither does it provide opportunity for monitoring or publishing of same. If you followed recently the Media Foundation for West Africa's Fourth Estate did some study, and they came out to show us a number of people who are not even complying with this bad asset declaration regime that we even have. A number of high-level public and political appointees have not even are not even in compliance. And unfortunately, even with this bad one, there's no sanction. We have no sanction. So from the start, when people get into office, the mindset that they get into, we don't even have a check and a balance on that. So human beings are not saints. It is systems and checks and balances that prevent people from being corrupt. So if you do not put those system and checks and balances in place appropriately as it should be, from the word start, it's a disaster for, it's a recipe for disaster. So that is where I will pick it as our key challenge to the fight against corruption. I'll come back and talk about the other things also. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Madam. We're so very grateful for that. And let me move to Mr. Jackson quickly, whilst we get Mr. Kujo to get himself set up to be part of the discussion. Now, Mr. Jackson, what will be your also initial discussion, ladies and gentlemen? What we do here is just a short housekeeping rule for all of us. What we do is that what you need to do for us is to be patient. At some point, we would ask you to be part of the discussion. Then you can be sending us requests. When we open the floor for that, you can send us a request to be a speaker, and then we'll allow you to be a speaker to make your point or ask your question. But for now, let's just follow the discussion, allow our panel members to delve into the various areas and angles that we want them to delve into. Then you come in. But let's have Mr. Jackson come in quickly. Yeah, Mr. Jackson, please.
Good morning. Good evening. Good evening. And it's exciting to talk about this particular topic. It's my opinion that unless we fix the corruption issue, all efforts at fixing the economy ultimately are doomed to disaster. If you don't fix corruption, ultimately the issues that we have to tackle, the things that we have to do, will go awry. The problem with this country now is not a problem of economic mismanagement, it's a problem of corruption, endemic corruption, horrendous corruption, corruption that we can all feel, see, touch, smell, talk about, and yet we say we have no proof. So they get away with it. Corruption that it suits everybody to pay lip service to, and yet do nothing about. I mean, I was almost embarrassed to hear Madam Beauty talk about the fact that there's no punishment. There's no punishment for wrongly declaring your assets. There's no sharing. No, it's not even published for us to look at. But let me go to the issue that's really at the heart of the matter for me. It's so easy for anyone to sit down and think, oh, but if somebody is chopping Ghana Road Fund, who cares? Or if somebody is chopping a bribe here, who cares? Let me tell everyone that is listening that you have to care. You have to care because corruption, its effects are felt by everyone in the country. Every person. And we could go on and on and on, but I want to take one issue that is burning these days. High taxes. And it's easy to say, oh, the government is taxing us too much. It's easy to say we don't pay enough taxes. But you know why taxes are a problem? Why we are being taxed too much? And yet people say that we don't. It's simply because of corruption. Right? See, think about it. First and foremost, corruption means that I will try and dodge tax if possible because I feel that the money I pay to the government is being chopped. So people don't pay taxes. And in every country where corruption is as high as it is in Ghana, you find that there's a huge reluctance to pay taxes. But we're still, the biggest form of corruption in this country is to give tax holidays. So our very corruption means that we weaken our ability to collect taxes. And because the taxes are little, people don't want to pay, And we will also get around. See, corruption means that even if I'm supposed to pay this amount of tax, I can pay and get around it. I can pay some GRA official and get around it. What does it mean? It means that all of us end up getting levied more and more tax and more indirect tax, because the indirect tax is the one that you can't avoid. What's an indirect tax? It's like VAT. It's like the talk tax. It's like e-levy. And we get levied that one because people can't avoid it. The taxes that are easily avoided are the direct taxes. Because of corruption, we don't pay. So today, if you are complaining that there's a tax on electricity, it's because of corruption. If you are complaining that there's a tax on vehicles, which will make it more expensive to run your, it is because of corruption. Today, if you are saying that this government is collecting more tax, it's because of corruption. I even dare say that just maybe the labor movement should be fighting corruption even more than it's fighting the actual tax increase. I dare say, and I say this very carefully, just maybe we should be fighting corruption more than we are so hot about LGBTI issues. Just maybe we should be fighting corruption because it is killing every one of us. If you go to the hospital and you can't get drugs, it is because of corruption. If your child goes to school and gets a poor education, it is because of corruption. If you can't get a job, it is because of corruption. If your pay is not enough, it is because of corruption. And I could go on and on and on. And I'm sure there'll be further chances for me to talk about specifically how corruption deters foreign investment, how corruption means that the CD is higher than it should be. It's due to corruption. How corruption itself is a tax in itself. And it means that small businesses suffer while big businesses get away with it. I could go on and on. But Norvan, I will end here for my opening remarks, and I'm sure there'll be further opportunities to talk about the various aspects of how corruption affects each and every one, the man in the street, the big boss, all of us are affected by the corruption.
I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to stay with you, Mr. Jackson, on this particular one. I mean, let's look at the business environment, and especially business environment, employment opportunities. You know, these are things that people want to understand how corruption really is dealing with these ones, and then, you know, in some way, somehow, fueling social inequality in our system. To understand. So now tell us, or discuss the sectors where corruption is deeply rooted, hindering merit-based hiring and promotion from where you sit as a businessman, and then also explain how regulatory processes may be subject to corruption, creating an even playing field for the businessman from your angle as a business person.
Okay, let me start from an SME, your average SME. You see, corruption in itself is a tax. It's a tax that companies and citizens pay, but it is enjoyed by a select few, typically our politicians, our technocrats, and our regulators and other officials. Think about it. The smaller the business, the less likely it is that you even have the money to pay the tax. They will say, come and pay some money upfront. You don't have money upfront, so you can't pay, and you can't get a job. And we can give you anecdotal story after story after story, where those that have the connections, those that have the patronage, will go and get a contract. bring the contract back to those that can do the job and say, hey, give me my 10%, my 15%, my 20%, my 25%, and then go and do the work. What does that mean? The SME who's actually doing the work has lost 25% of the revenue. He has to pay his staff less because the money is not enough. So if you are listening, if you are poorly paid, remember that it's partly because of corruption. That SME has an incentive not to do the job well. Because once there's corruption and somebody has taken some money up front and the person is going to be very, very hard, who is going to come and say that the work was done in a shoddy manner? If you are driving on roads that have potholes, it is because of the corruption in our road sector. If you are in a building that is poorly constructed, it is because of the corruption in our construction sector. If you have poor maintenance, it is because of the corruption. And this corruption is not just, I'm not talking just politicians, technocrats, even middle level officials do it. If you go to the hospital and your drugs cost too much, it is because somebody took some money before he issued the contract to buy drugs. So there's some upfront cost. If you work for that pharmacy, if you work for that importer, and you are not paid well, it is because of the contracts that they are sharing. So, Norvan, this is affecting all of us. This is killing all of us, including our SME sector that produces employment. When there is corruption, there's no incentive to employ the people we require. There's no incentive to pay them well. There's no incentive to even do the job well. And the big companies, you see, what corruption does is that it allocates our resources wrongly to big companies who are doing big purchases because there's enough fat to be taken away, and it takes away from small companies. Corruption means that it is better to build a hospital where there is a procurement opportunity than to take simple measures that will provide public health, that will keep all of us healthy. That's why a hospital that is functioning, a hospital that is running, a hospital that is providing public health service will be raised to the ground, not fixed. It's because of corruption. It's because of corruption. And if you don't fix the corruption problem, SMEs will never have a level playing field. If you don't punish corruption, SMEs won't thrive. If you don't punish corruption, all of us will suffer. Norvan, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Joe Jackson. If you just joined us, you are, following us on the very important discussion, which is on corruption in Ghana, how that affects everyday lives and the economy. And my guest for tonight has been Mr. Joe Jackson, Director of Operations, Dealers Finance, Madam Beauty Emefanete, who is the Executive Secretary for the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, and then Mr. Franklin Kujo, who is the founding president and Executive Secretary or CEO, let me put it that way, of Imani Ghana. We will also be joined by Dr. Ishmael Dodu, who would be speaking to us from the United States here, and he will also be sharing his thoughts. And as I did indicate, what we'll be doing that at some point will allow you to also ask your questions or add your voice as to how we can deal with the corruption that stares at our face. Some other areas, it's as if it's a taboo to talk about corruption. Some people say when you talk about corruption, people in authority are not willing to act. They are rather willing to defend the very people who engage in corruption and shield them. But how can we deal with this? Because when you travel out, you see very effective trains, effective bus systems. You see that people are willing to deal with the issues, and so you are really sure that corruption is not something that would happen. Like they do, if you see something, say something. They are willing to deal with corruption in its very apt and quick. And so it doesn't matter who, you can be a minister of state in nations like Singapore. A minister of state will be put into prison for indulging in corruption, and they don't mind. Dr. Ishmael Dodu, if you can accept the request for us to be a speaker, we'll be grateful to you. But let me go back to Madame Butinete. Corruption, as it should be. I mean, you are somebody who's been working in that area for a very long time. Let's come to the area of economic inefficiencies and how you see it. Madam Butinete, if you can unmute yourself for us, we'll be grateful, and explain how wastage of resources due to corruption practices further impedes economic growth from where you sit, because you've indicated to us that, I mean, we don't seem to have the laws to actually deal with corruption in our part of the world. And it's one of the reasons why it's become a field day for people to engage in it, whether, directly or indirectly, and we watch them to go scot-free.
All right. Thank you very much, Norvan. So before I respond to the question you just asked, I just want to add a little bit to what Mr. Joe Jackson talked about. I just want to make the point that the private sector, they are not what I call Father Christmases. So anytime the private sector pays bribe, they kind of put it on the final consumer. So any bribe that is taken from the private sector, it's the final consumer that pays off. So when we see prices of goods are very expensive, it's because we are also paying for the bribes that were paid to get the goods and services to us. In 2017, the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition with members and partners undertook one of the biggest sample size surveys in this country. We sampled about 18,000 people. And what did we want to find out? We wanted to understand what are their perception about corruption, also understand what is their experiences when it comes to corruption, and also the knowledge of corruption. I mean, the understanding, if they actually understood what corruption is. And it's interesting to note, and we did this survey because almost all the time people talk about corruption surveys are always perception surveys, and perceptions are not reality. So with the kind support of the USAID, we had this opportunity and undertook this survey. And it's interesting to note that when we did the perception of corruption in terms of institutions, the police came first, or came tops as the perceived the most corrupt institution. And then when we did the actual, on the side of the actual, the police came about the fourth or so. They were about number 4 in that order. And for the actual people who actually paid bribes, we were actually surprised to find that the customs division of the GRA came tops. And they had, I think, about 76% people who engaged them paid bribes. Obviously, customs has to do with goods and services. Customs have to do with people. It's not every Ghanaian who will engage the customs division of the GRA. It is people who are paying tax. So you have a number of people, and all these majority are linked to the private sector. So if we have a big number of people, I mean, who engage the customs division and they are paying bribe, it means that any bribe they pay, they also put it on the final consumer. And that also suggests to us that we are not actually putting in a lot of effort in terms of this fight against corruption, because we always are dismissive that it is just perception. Interestingly, the UNODC supported the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and then the Ghana Statistical Service to also undertake another survey. And they found out that about 5 billion is being paid in bribes to public officials. So what it means then is that, and this was for the year 2021, what it means that there again, a number of people who engage our public sector have to pay bribe. And people can only pay bribe when they want to shortchange or circumvent the process or due process. So in terms of service delivery, it means that people, once they are not able to get good access, they will do whatever they can to circumvent the process. And that is what becomes a challenge. And the sad part is that when you talk about petty corruption has to do with the day-to-day service provision that ordinary citizens have to undergo. And we know how our economic situation is. We know how it is difficult for people to have even enough, to fend for themselves. So if people who are already struggling have to pay, to access public service delivery, then it means that we are adding additional stress and burden to the ordinary citizen, to the ordinary worker. So whatever they are paid is not enough, and we are also fleecing it through bribery and corruption. And that's why at a point we had to do a study we did last year, which we termed GACC Anti-Corruption Report 2023, to give us a broad perspective on outlook of what the corruption situation is. And this study, we decided to just bring together indices, from Afrobarometer. We picked the CPI, which was just launched recently, the 2023. We are still standing where we are. But when we did this research last year, we're still 43 anyway. So when we pick all this, the picture we see is that corruption has been normalized. There's this normalization of corruption. What it means is that people are accepting corruption as part of, that they are providing justification for it. And that takes me back to the original survey I was talking about we did in around 2017, where we sought to understand Ghanaians' knowledge about corruption. And it will interest you to know that Ghanaians didn't think that certain manifestations of corruption were corruption. So people didn't see, for instance, conflict of interest as corruption. They didn't see abuse of discretion as corruption. They didn't see payment of facilitation fee as acts of corruption. So meaning when you do these things, there's justification. People can say that, I did it and it's not corruption. We can justify it. And that's, for us, is a challenge until we all understand that this is how corruption affects us. This is how corruption impacts our lives. This is how it even affects our economy. We would continue to talk about this issue on and again. I just want to share some data that has to do with our exports, sorry. An assessment that was conducted between Ghana, Switzerland, India, and the UAE established that over 6 billion worth of gold exports remain unaccounted for from 2013 to 2016. During the same period, Switzerland gold import figures revealed that they had imported close to 7 billion worth of gold from Ghana. So in the books of Switzerland, they imported 7 billion gold from Ghana. But in our books, that was not reflected. And you ask yourself, why? And what happened? Who has been held accountable? Ghana's official records indicated a little over 3 billion. So when Switzerland is saying they imported 7 billion in their books, we are showing 3 billion. And we ask ourselves, why should this be? Another one is investigation conducted by YOCO on 8 gold export companies for the period 2019 to 2021 revealed a total of 1.2 billion US dollars was illicitly flowed out of Ghana. Another one is an audit conducted into Ghana's custom management system in 2019 revealed that 1.8 billion was transferred outside the country for which no goods came into Ghana. So these are data suggesting that there's a lot. And Ghana is currently in IMF. And look at the figure, the money we are talking about and how much are we getting from the IMF. Meaning, if we're able to set our systems and put our frameworks in place, would have enough to be able to take care of everyone and be better economically, because it's just so sad that we are losing a lot from corruption, from illicit activities, and also from money laundering. So this is how Ghana's story has become. And until we all, and I agree with what Mr. Joe Jackson said, until we all see it as something that we need to push together and be angry about and say, this has to change, we'll still be where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tackling revelation with numbers that you have shared with us, Madam Beauty Emefanete, and she is the Executive Secretary for the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. Corruption is indeed very expensive. You know, if you don't think so, I mean, you should look around. Somebody told me that the 3 billion IMF is giving us dollars is right here in our country. Why are we chasing the IMF with such meager amount of money? That is the question that somebody said. And I remember around the same time when this IMF thing came, people were like, you just need to put about 3, 4, 5 people in this country, and that money we are looking for can be given to us, and so there'll be no need to go to the IMF. You can share your thoughts, your questions with us at Norvan Reports, at Norvan Report. Just tweet at us and share your questions, your thoughts, your contributions with us on this particular topic as to how we can deal with corruption, and also what you can do for us, ladies and gentlemen, is to know that at some point, we will allow you to also come in with your questions and your contribution. But let me bring in Dr. Ishmael Dodu. And Dr. Ishmael Dodu is somebody who has worked with a lot of these agencies and will be able to deal with us on that matter. Dr. Ishmael, somebody may ask, what is corruption? We are talking about corruption. What can be seen or what can be said to be corruption from where you sit, and how you think this is affecting the very fiber of our society, and how the international community views us because of where you have worked and the kind of work you're doing across the world. They view us as a nation, Ghana, when it comes to corruption.
All right, thank you very much, Norvan. And I want to salute my elder sister, Nate, and Joe Jackson for the excellent submissions on the corruption issue. I think corruption is one thing that's really affecting the essence of the good governance and the democracy that Ghana has chopped for himself. Ghana had been a country that had been very well respected, indeed being the first country within Africa that got their independence from colonial rule and has set up institutions and laws and policies and the rules of the law, which had ensured that Ghana was on the path towards becoming an ideal democracy or democratic dispensation for the world to sort of be very, to behold and learn from. And then fast forward from 1957 to now, we are not recording very well. I mean, so I'll start from first corruption. In a simple form, corruption is a form of dishonest behavior. So if you engage in any form of dishonest behavior, such as getting involved in bribery or double dealing of an issue, you don't disclose an issue where, or you are a public servant and you're taking some money ahead of delivering your work, or you're a policeman who stops somebody who has really done something wrong, and then you say, look, I'll let you go free if you can pay some money to me, or some kind of fraudulent behaviors by individuals or businesses, or a public servant or government appointee who actually is engaged in abuse of entrusted power for private gain. These are all aspects or different types of corruption. In fact, corruption can span from very ground corrupt practices to one that is very, very simple. You can also have, supply versus demand corruption. My senior brother Joe Jackson was referring to that the corruption has a value chain. So there are actors within the value chain that are actually benefiting from the corruption. So all these things, when you look at them and you look at the ecosystem or the key elements of corruption, it gives you an impression of the grand of style of the thing that we are dealing with. I would say that when you look at the situation that Ghana is faced with, if Ghana is to move forward, to create a peace and prosperity that can be inclusive of our society, then we have to deal with the issue of corruption. I refer to the Transparency International recently, the report that they came out that puts Ghana that for the past 4 years or so, almost 7 years, we've not actually done something to our corruption. We have remained the same. They looked at all the countries in Africa, and the top 10, I think, 70% of the top 10 are below 50% rating for corruption. And Ghana is actually at 43%. And there were those who were arguing that Ghana should never be among the top 10 of improved corruption index for a country. That when you deconstruct the acts of corruption, it is so endemic. The office of the president, judiciary, so we're talking about the executive, judiciary, and the legislature are all involved in critical acts of corruption. And what is very, very worrying is the security sector or the justice system that upholds the rules of the law to deal with the issue of corruption that are themselves corrupt. So when you have a situation like this, then it creates an atmosphere or a perception of helplessness that if someone with a foreign direct investment, big numbers want to invest in your railway sector, for example, to maybe say, well, I'm going to invest billions to build, operate, and transfer. Then that investor looking at what has been said about Ghana or the report will say, well, if somebody cheats me, I cannot go to the court. I can't trust him. If I bring my money in, somebody will tell me his name is Kofi when it's actually Kwame. He will defraud me. So I will not bring my investment. So I think the question that the topic we are dealing with, how corruption is impacting on everyday lives and economy, is very vital at this point, especially at the point where we are preparing for election. We are looking at leadership changes. I believe that what is very, very key for us as we discuss this issue of corruption is to ask ourselves a lot of key questions that are very tough. Number one, corruption are engaged by individuals, right? So the agency of corruption is the individual. So what are we doing to ensure that we have individuals that are selfless, that have integrity, that can go into public offices. That's the first thing. So how do we select such individuals into offices? The second is the process of dealing with corruption. We have institutions of corruption, which my sister Nate talked about, and she belonged to one of those. Now, are these institutions so independent enough to deal with the issue of corruption, or they will start a process and somebody from the top will say, stop it? We saw the Cecilia Park case, which is a case in point. Then the third point is, what is the willingness of the collective? I'm talking about the citizens. What is our willingness to stamp out corruption from our system or from our country? If we are able to deal with these three key elements, I think that we'll be able to make some headway, because whether we like it or not, because of the perpetration of corruption and how endemic it is in our body politics, our social, economic, and political setup, every citizen will suffer the impact of corruption. If you, whether you like it or not. So you can set up a very successful business, but because this corruption it becomes an existential threat to the thriving and the prosperity of your business. So it's really not a simple matter if we're to look at it. And I think this is why we have to engage in this conversation, to really come out of this discussion around, okay, what are the key things that we need to do and committed to avert corruption? This is my earlier submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ismail Dudu. Now let me bring in Mr. Franklin Kujo, who, thank God, we've been able to get him to join us. Mr. Franklin Kujo, if you can unmute, share with us. Let me take you direct to the procurement side. This is one area that for a very long time, many people have spoken about. We have the procurement laws. It has all that it takes, the procurement authority, but people say it's become a breeding ground for corruption. Mr. Kujo, share with us what your thoughts are and what you see there and how we can deal with this corruption issue over there. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me well?
Very well. We can hear you loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
I'm terribly sorry. I think I'm a bit rusty when it comes to technology. And so I had to restart the entire thing again. But I was listening in while I was doing all of that. Thank you. Beautiful conversation so far. Well, who was it that was saying that corruption is so difficult to fight these days? Once you're fighting it, it comes back fighting you with every arsenal it has in its in it in its store, right? Armory it has in its arsenal. But you see, dissecting Ghana's corruption is not quite easy at all. And I like to deal with the ground theft, what I call